Welcome back. Let us examine the structure of a CSS syntax that will become the basic building block of the complex selectors. Right here, we are looking at an element selector, H1. And what you have in this curly braces, it is called the declaration block. Your declaration block contains the individual rules themselves. And your rules are divided into two: the property and the value. The property is denoted by this green and the value is denoted by this purple. In your declaration block, the property always comes first, followed by a column, then followed by your value. You can add as many property value pairs as you want, but each must be separated by a semicolon. In this our case, this entire rule is targeting the H1 tag, changing the font to Arial and the color to black. Now let us look at the other basic CSS selectors. We have our element selector, which is the H1 and which is what we looked at in the previous page. Other element selectors are H2, which is heading 2, H3, which is heading 3, TD, which is table cells. Now we have the class selector. The class selector is preceded by a dot sign and the class name, like we looked at in the previous lesson. And we have our ID selector, which is preceded by a hashtag and the ID name. We also looked at that in the previous lesson. Now let us go to our page that we are working on. We are going to style this page using CSS. Before we can proceed to style this page, you have to make sure that your CSS style sheet is open. If it's not open on your page, then there is no need to worry. You simply come down to the top of your Dreamweaver, click on Windows and look for your CSS style sheet. Enable it by clicking on it and it immediately comes up on this side, on your right hand side. Now when this is done, you are now ready to create your CSS styles. Like we said, there are three selectors that we are going to look at. We are going to look at the element selector, which is the H1, H2, P, and the TD. We are going to look at the class selector, which is preceded by a dot sign, and we are going to look at the ID selector, which is preceded by the hashtag sign. Let us go back to our previous page. H1 for element selector, H1, H2, H3, TD, P, those are all element selector. The class selector preceded by a dot sign and the ID selector preceded by a hash sign. Now let us come to this page. Let us start with the element selector. We are going to style our element selector using CSS. Let us start with the H1 element selector. To get started, click on the H1 itself. Make sure your cursor is blinking on the H1 tag. Then come down here to your CSS styles. You see where you have the new rule, which looks something like a plus sign. Click on it and a dialog box appears. Now your dialog box, it prompts you to choose your selector type. In our case, we are dealing with tags, so we click on it, a drop down menu appears and you choose tag. Now you also notice that you have your rule definition. It asks you where you want your rule to be defined. Is it just on this page or on every page that has the H1 selector? For now, let's leave it on this document only. We'll simply come here and put our H1 and we click OK. The moment you click OK, another CSS rule definition box comes up asking you to choose your font family, your background and your block for that H1 selector. So we'll simply come here. Let's give it a font family of Bedana. Let's give it a size of 36 and let's give it a color of red. Let's come to the background and let's give it a background of yellow and click apply. The moment you click apply, your CSS rule takes effect. In this case, we are changing the rules for the H1 selector. Now you can see that our H1 is now having a color of red and a background color of yellow, and then you click OK. Now you are done creating the CSS style for your H1 selector, which is an element selector. Now let us move on to creating our CSS style for our class selector and for our ID selector. Just before we go on, let us start with the ID selector. Let us remind ourselves of the different IDs that we have on this page. The IDs are header, we have the content, we have the sidebar, and we have our footer. Now let us create our CSS rule for our ID selector. To do that, we'll come back to this CSS styles, click on our new CSS rule. The dialog box comes up, and in our selector type, we'll simply come down to the ID selector and choose the ID selector that we want to style. Now let us style the content. We'll simply, earlier we said in order to identify an ID selector, it has to be preceded by a hashtag. So we'll simply start by putting the hashtag and the ID name, which is content, and you click OK. When this is done, it brings up a new dialog box asking you to choose your style definition for that ID. Now let us choose the font for our ID. Let us choose a unique font. Let us choose comic and choose a font size of 16. Let's choose a color of blue, and let's apply it and see what we have. Immediately, all the parameters that we specify here takes effect, and it affects only our content ID, and we click OK. So you can see now that we've been able to style our header and we've been able to style our ID. We styled our H1 selector here, and here we styled our content ID. Now let us style our class. We can also go ahead and style this ID and also this ID. You can go ahead and do that on your own. Now let us style our class. If we go back to the previous lesson, we discovered that we have 3 classes. We have the word independent used 3 times on this page. We have it here, we have it here, and we also have it here. Now the independent has a class by the name independent. Now let us style this class and see what we have. To style it, you simply go to your CSS style sheet, go to the new rule, click on it, and this dialog box comes up. Now on your selector type, you choose class, and here we are going to type the class name. Remember what we said earlier, that a class name is preceded by a dot sign, this, and then the class name. So our class name is independent, and we are going to click on OK. Our second dialog box comes up asking us to choose the parameter for that class, and let us give that class independent a font of Times New Roman, a font size of 18 for visibility, and let us give it a unique color of, let us give it a color of green, and let's click apply. Immediately you see that the word independent that has that class on it changes to this parameter, and let's click OK. So now we have been able to style our element selector, we've been able to style our ID selector, and we have been able to style our class selector. And these are the simple ways to apply CSS in styling your basic selector. Now let us move on to the more complex selectors in the next lesson.